Hello there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Myro, and today we're talking about the 70s. Recently, I put a poll on my channel asking you, should I carry on with the 90s or should I maybe start with 1970s? Well, most of you voted for the 70s, so here I am. We're gonna talk about maybe widely considered maybe the best decade in music history. Well, I tend to disagree with that, but anyway, still think it's a fantastic decade. Bunch of classic albums. Some of my favorite records are from this decade, and I'll finish the 90s series at some point. But for now, I'm gonna stick with the 70s, and obviously, I'm gonna start with 1970. This year is stacked. There are a bunch of great records, and I'll talk about my 10 favorite records from the year, and I'm gonna mention obviously a couple of honorable mentions that didn't make the cut. And before I start, I just want to let you know this is just my personal opinion, my personal list. Um, we all have different tastes, so some of the records you love maybe will not find a place on my list. Some of them maybe will, but if you have your lists, please share them in the comments down below. I really love seeing other people's suggestions and what they love or what they hate. So let's start off with some honorable mentions, shall we? There are a couple of records that I'm going to mention that didn't make the cut, usually widely considered as some of the best of the year and in top 10s, in top 5s of the year. For sure, especially the first one I'm going to mention, which is Neil Young's After the Gold Rush. It is a really good record. It's a great record even, but I'm not the biggest Neil Young fan. His voice is, you know, I don't I don't like it that much, but I cannot deny the greatness of the record in general because there are some great songs on it, especially the first half of the record is almost flawless. The other one I have to mention is Van Morrison's Moondance. Same thing with that album as well. Um, Great stuff, but not the biggest fan of Van Morrison. But anyway, let's get this started with my actual top 10 list. And I'm gonna start off with my number 10, which is Lola versus Powerman and the Money Ground by the Kings. Following the fantastic stretch of albums, I think the Kings carried on with the same energy into the 70s with this record. You could say that this, in a way, is a concept record, since all the songs' subject matter are about disdain and bitterness with the music industry in general. And even though the lyrics are quite punchy and you can feel the venom in them, and there obviously even sadness, like on the song Strangers, the record overall is quite diverse and interesting. At times, it can be quite humorous, as on the song Ape Man. Uh, it is a really tight release containing some of their best work, Lola being one of those big songs. And in a way, I think this is an underrated record for them, and they're an underrated band as well. If you look the stretch of albums they released in the 60s, so I think it is a great way for them to start into a new decade. It's a great record. At number 9, I have to mention the Beatles with Let It Be. It might be unfinished, but to me, that just adds even more to it. I think it's a great record, obviously overshadowed by the albums that came before it. It is their final release, but it was not the final record they recorded. That will be Abbey Road. The tensions between band members were apparent even ever since White Album, so decided to make one final performance on Rooftop. And from those jam sessions, this album came together, and it was released after they, broke up. But I have to admit, I prefer the Let It Be Naked version over the original. Some of the orchestral arrangement that was done by Phil Spector hurt the songs, in my opinion, and I think even Paul McCartney was not pleased with that, so he decided to release the other version without those string arrangements. And that was especially felt on the song The Long and Winding Road, which sounds much better on the newer version than the original one. I mean, in my opinion, maybe it's not their best record, but I still like it a lot. Bunch of great tracks. So yeah, number nine, The Beatles, Let It Be. At number eight, I have Curtis Mayfield and his debut record, Curtis. This is a phenomenal record, and to tell you the truth, when I started doing deep dive of the year, I wasn't even sure that this album will be in my top 20, but I was blown away. I mean, I heard a couple of tracks before, but I never listened to this whole album in full. So I decided to, give it a go to listen to a couple of other records by him. I know Superfly is actually considered as his best work, but to me, this album, which compared to Superfly is less funk, more soul, it feels more sincere, and I like that. So this, to me, this is his best work. Um, there are eight tracks here and not a single dud. It sounds amazing. The production is really good. Curtis' voice is beautiful and soulful and quite an impactful in conveying the messages of the world and social injustice. And what a way to kick off this whole record with that apocalyptic, don't worry if there's hell below, we're all going to go. It is a fantastic opener and fantastic arrangements all around, strings, horns, you name it. Everything sounds lush, and obviously his voice is, to me, the high point in general. I think it's really soothing, it is beautiful, and the lyrics, especially here, are instant classic. So surprisingly, I really enjoyed, because I'm usually not into soul that much, but this blown me away. So yeah, number eight, Curtis Mayfield with his debut record, Curtis. At number seven, I have Led Zeppelin with the record Led Zeppelin 3. This marks a big change up in sound after Led Zeppelin 1 and 2. Couple of tracks here still have that early Zeppelin DNA, obviously, but for the most part, it sounds different. It is folky and slow, and I think it might be even underrated compared to the first two records, especially. All of the folkier, more acoustic, slower tracks on this record are all fantastic, and some of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs like Gallows Pole, Tangerine, or That's the Way. Obviously, the rocking tracks are still great, like Immigrant Song and Out of the Tiles, but I heard Immigrant Song so many times, so I don't want to hear it anymore, even though it's still a great track. Since I've Been Loving You is straightforward blues song and one of my favorite blues songs in general. And I think this album is super underrated and super interesting. Um it is quite dynamic. It has a nice variety to it and sound. So yeah, that's the reason it's on my list. Number seven, Led Zeppelin 3. At number six, I have David Bowie and his third studio album, The Man Who Sold the World. To me, this is an album that started the magnificent run of records Bowie did in the 70s. It is a shift in sound from his previous two records, especially the first self-titled one. This is a proper rock record. It's quite heavy at times, channeling some Led Zeppelin energy on some of these songs as well. The band here showcased their talent, especially obviously Mick Ronson on guitars, who will help Bowie propel into stardom in just a couple of years down the road. We have Tony Visconti, a long time collaborated with Bowie, who played bass here. I mean, it is completely different sounding record if you compare this one even to the previous one, so-called Space Oddity record. I feel this is a quite an underrated Bowie record, maybe not as melodic as his later work, but to me this album is full of bangers like the opening track, The Width of a Circle, one of the most complex songs on the record, the title track, Savior Machine. The lyrics and the overall tone is quite bleak, as seen in All the Madmen, a song that was inspired by Bowie's brother Terry, a song that shows that all the madmen are free and those who are sane are in mental institutions. And we have After All, that is another dark and bleak song that is based on the writings of Friedrich Nietzsche. And you can hear the impact this song had on the development of gothic rock and the bands like The Cure or Susie and the Banshees. I mean, to me, this is an overlooked Bowie record. They don't talk about it that as much as, for example, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust or Low or any of those records. I think this one is quite an underrated record full of great songs and that just showcases the talent that Bowie and the band had even in the beginning of their careers. So yeah, number six, David Bowie, The Man Who Sold the World. At number five, I have Miles Davis and his monumental record, Bitches Brew. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't a big jazz fan if like 10 years ago. So if you ask me what I thought about jazz, I would say, well, I guess it's okay. I thought I would never listen to jazz, but over the years, especially the last couple of years, I started to appreciate jazz a lot more, way more than before. And this album is so monumental and influential that there are no words to describe it. Miles Davis departed from that traditional jazz rhythms and he started to experiment with electric piano and electric guitar, adding more uh, rock influenced arrangement into the mix. And he managed to create an album that sounded way different than some of the other records of the era. And he kind of, this album in a way is one of the pillars of jazz fusion and modern jazz in general. And from the first notes, Pharaoh's Dance sucks you in and you just lose the perception of time for the next 94 minutes. Yes, this is the runtime of the record, and it is a complex, driving, chaotic record that deserves all the praise it got, and it still gets. I know it received some kind of mixed reception on release, but not shortly after the release, people became aware of how seminal and monumental this record actually is, and to this day. So, fantastic record. So, number five, Miles Davis, Bitches Brew. At number four, I have another groundbreaking record that many consider created a whole new genre of music. And I cannot disagree with them. That is obviously the self titled debut by Black Sabbath. Obviously, there are other bands and songs that came even before Black Sabbath that influenced the creation of the genre, but I don't think any of those records or songs were as influential as this album, which was quite groundbreaking at the time and unique. I don't know how people reacted when this came out. Maybe scared children, mothers were afraid. I don't know. Just look at the cover artwork. It's quite sinister. And the opening track, the title track, is quite sinister as well. And a song that not only helped the development of heavy metal, it's a song that managed to create the whole new subgenre of music, of heavy metal music that is doom metal. It is a quite sinister track. It's slow opening, doomy riff that kind of shifts in the end. Some it's a trademark, Black Sabbath trademark. The dynamic changes that happening throughout the song. I mean, Tony Iommi is, I don't know, a riff master. Some great riffs on this record and the records to follow. Obviously, we have The Wizard, which is a bluesy track. We have Ozzy on a harmonica singing about, I don't know, Gandalf or their drug dealer, not sure. Then we have Nib with more interesting lyrics, classic song from this record. Yeah, this album is only 7 songs. They're all great, and it is a fantastic debut record. It's one of the better debut records of all time, and I don't know how they managed to put not one but two records, two fantastic records in the same year. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's fantastic. Go listen to it. At number three, I have maybe a surprising entry for some, but I just love this album. That is John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band. The songwriting is fantastic. I mean, I love Imagine, but I prefer this one because it sounds raw. The singing is great. This album is pure emotion. And I mean, the album starts and closes with two harrowing songs about his deceased mother, and especially the end of the song "Mother" is quite strong, and it represents all of that repressed feelings he had, and it's a product of the primal therapy sessions Lennon had before recording this album. And what I love about it are the lyrics that are kind of very personal. They're maybe simple, but I think he managed to convey his thoughts and feelings, his raw emotion into these songs. And you can feel that, and it's quite personal record, and I love that part of it. This whole record feels like he is, I don't know, in therapy session, and you're here with them, and he's spitting out his soul in these songs. Obviously, we have maybe the most well-known song from this record, "Working Class Hero," which is quite a Dylan-esque song, and it has almost venomous feel to it, and I think he nailed it. This is a fantastic record. It's not my favorite record by a Beatle, but it is close second. I'm gonna talk about my favorite Beatles soon enough. And number two, Black Sabbath, Paranoid. Two fantastic records, months apart. I'm not sure how they did it, but they did. And even though the critics and music journalists were not into their debut, they managed to sell well enough, so they were back in the studio creating this masterpiece, and they just kind of expanded the sound from their debut and added something more, something different. It opens up with anti-war song War Pigs, which was initially the title of the record, but as apparent on the cover artwork, it is about politicians, greedy politicians who are sending young soldiers to die for no apparent reason. Then we have title track Paranoid, which was the last addition to the album, and even the band members were kind of stating that it is a filler track, which certainly isn't. It has a fantastic riff, and to tell you the truth, when I listen to Black Sabbath, I tend to gravitate towards different albums because I heard this one so much. But Paranoid is one of the tracks that, and War Pigs obviously, that I'm never bored listening to. So they're both fantastic songs. Planet Caravan is a unique song in their discography. It has unique song structure. It has more jazzy kind of feel to it, soothing kind of track. Iron Man is a song maybe I don't want to hear it anymore. And this is kind of a Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water kind of thing. Everyone who wants to learn the guitar starts playing Iron Man or Smoke on the Water from Deep Purple. My two favorite tracks on the record, on the other hand, are maybe more underlooked, and that is Electric Funeral and Hand of Doom, especially. Both fantastic songs. And I just love every single song on this one. Ozzy sounds even better than on the debut. The riffs are even more groundbreaking than ever. It is a classic record for a reason, and it's another groundbreaking record by a band who managed in the same year to create two masterpieces. So yeah, Black Sabbath, Paranoid, number two. Number one, my favorite album of 1970 is George Harrison, All Things Must Pass. It's his third studio album, and this is by far my favorite post-Beatles record by any former Beatle. I love Plastic Ono Band, but this is just on a whole new level. It is an impressive double, well, actually triple album that is packed with fantastic ideas that showcased how underutilized George Harrison was in the Beatles, and this album proves that because a bunch of these songs were written during the Beatles days, and for a wide range of reasons, they were never um, accepted by Lennon McCartney duo, and they were rejected, so they end up on his solo album. George Harrison is an underrated songwriter and arranger. I love his Beatles tracks a lot, and this album represents George's uh, spirituality and his frustration as well. The songwriting here is exceptional. The arrangements, like I said, are masterfully done. The production is great, and I like how his songs were always more atmospheric than um, compared to the other Beatles members, and I like how his lyrics are kind of always hopeful. They're not jolly or morbid. They're kind of in between, and there's always hope in them. There's a lot to digest here. It's a quite a long album, but a quite rewarding listening experience. So when I listen to it, I listen it from start to finish. Full of bangers, full of great hooks, great arrangements, fantastic songs like My Sweet Lord, Wawa, What Is Life, the title track, and the opening track, I Have You Anytime, which he co wrote with Bob Dylan, are all great. And it is by far my favorite album of 1970. Nothing even comes close, to tell you the truth, not even Black Sabbath. And as a big fan, this album is a masterpiece and 10 out of 10 for me. So yeah, this will be my list. And please share your thoughts and feelings down in the comments down below. Your list, if you have them, your favorite albums from 1970. And please like, share, subscribe, and all of that good YouTube jazz. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.